You can now find me on RoadStr, the app connecting people through cars.
Hello everybody. Sometimes car manufacturers can become so preoccupied with whether they could, they don't take the time to stop and think whether they should. And this vehicle is one of those, the 5 Series GT, dubbed one of BMW's biggest mistakes. Not my words, instead the words of Top Gear, the website, not the TV show. However, I think it's very possible that we've all been a little bit too hasty in judging this car. Let's find out if that's the case. Now, I know what you're all thinking. James, just look at the thing. Of course, it was a total disaster. But I think if you take a moment and step back, actually, this has a lot going for it. In fact, if you were to ask the proverbial man in the street what it is they want from a car, this is almost perfect. Because people these days seem obsessed with having a slightly higher driving position. Ironic, because most of the people that I personally know who say they want that tend not to be very good drivers. People also want a lot of space in the car, regardless whether they actually need it or not. Despite this apparent desire for practicality, we're also rather obsessed with coupe styling. And here what you have is a car made up really of all the best bits of the 5, 6 and 7 series. Many people have talked about the fact that the 5 Series GT is really as much 7 as it is 5. However, the truth is, for the F10 generation of 5 Series, the car moved to a platform that was much more closely aligned with the 7 anyway. So all 5 Series you could say that about. This is why the cars put on a couple of 100 kilos when they moved from the old E60 generation. If you're not familiar with BMW model names, that's the one that had the V10 M5. I'm sure you probably remember that. You may also recall that there was a 3 Series GT and there is now currently a 6 Series GT. In sales terms, I believe all of them have been an absolute disaster. And where many cars like this tend to find there is at least one market they work, I don't think that's true of the 5 GT. This car is a 2017 535D GT Luxury. It's from the very final year of production, which commenced in 2009. So successful were the 5 and 3 Series GT, BMW have yet to replace them. I suppose officially speaking, it's the 6 GT which has taken over the mantle from this, but I don't think anybody really even noticed when they stopped building the things. The sad thing is, though, that actually there is a lot I quite like about this car. It's BMW being a little bit bold, a little bit brave, something they don't do all that often. No, it's not a looker, nor was it ever going to be. You could give Michelangelo these proportions to work with, and I don't think he's going to turn out anything particularly memorable. However, it does at least seem to be a little bit less showy and in your face than, say, an X6. It's still a very large car, the largest of all the 5s in fact, at 5 meters long, and nearly as long as a full-up 7. However, because of the way BMW have packaged this car, you get a lot of space, and the same can't always be said of the 7. Those tend to do very well for rear legroom, but in terms of boot space, they're not always brilliant. This does pretty well in both. Rear legroom is more than acceptable for the majority of people, and the boot is excellent. The boot actually is one of the pieces of funky design I was talking about, because it opens in 2 different ways, either as a hatch, as you've probably seen, or you can release the rear portion, kind of like a regular 5 Series, and you can operate the 2 modes by the 2 boot handles. If you're in a car park with restricted height, or you simply want to load something straight through, opening the rear section is actually quite convenient. I'm also told if you're out and about and you've got family and whatnot in the car and it's a cold day, by doing it that way, you don't let lots and lots of chilly air into the cabin. And that is as good a moment as any to mention what I think is far and away the best thing about this car. The interior. It's absolutely brilliant. At a quick glance, you probably think it's just more or less standard BMW with a mix of 7 and 5 series, and I would say probably more 7 than 5 in here. However, that's not what I like about it so much. This car feels genuinely luxurious through a combination of the materials. This has plenty of nice leather, bits of wood too, but also the light and the space. If this car were in your typical German car spec, so black exterior, black interior, black headlining, no sunroof, privacy glass, I would be hating it right about now. But it's not. This car is proof that just a few different options ticked can completely transform the way something feels. This car has the light-coloured Napa leather, which feels and looks beautiful. It's got this huge panoramic sunroof. Yes, there is privacy glass at the back, but the headliner is also light, which means no matter which seat you're in, it feels like you've got loads of space. It's a glorious sunny day today, and I feel like I'm getting all of it in here. It's magnificent. And this, to me, is what really defines luxury. It's not technology, it's not gizmos, it's not gimmicks, because that stuff dates and ages. It's this sense of calm, light, and airiness. And there, this car scores very highly. Just as good, if not, I think, better than many S7, because it simply has more room in it. However, if you just want a nice, big, airy car, there are lots of them out there. This needs to offer something a little bit more. Being a BMW with the pokey 535D engine, you'd hope it can do the sporty thing as well. So, now we're on one of my favourite roads. Let's see how it copes. Considering this is not an overtly sporty car, I think it actually does quite well. The steering's got a reasonable sense of weight to it. It's not particularly engaging, but it is better than I expected from it. The car does handle the bends relatively well, but you have to remember it is a big old bus. There were many engines in both petrol and diesel available for the 5 Series GT, but I think this is probably the one that suits this car best. The 535D is a straight 6 3-litre with twin turbos. It produces here 308 horsepower and about 465 pound-foot of torque. That's 630 newton-meters, and it makes that from very, very low RPM. As this is a car which weighs 2 tons, having more torque than power is certainly a good thing. Unfortunately, fuel economy isn't stellar. This car, since the trip counter was reset, has averaged 33.5 to the gallon. The headlights, typical for BMW, are very good. This has the adaptive items, it also has a heads-up display, and quite a few other things too. The gearbox is certainly competent in both automatic and manual modes. It is the now ubiquitous ZF 8-speed. Though it is certainly competent, if not massively capable, the suspension is definitely one of this car's weak points. You would imagine that any 70-odd thousand pound luxury-focused BMW would have adaptive dampers by default. But this does not. They are passive items. What it does have is an active anti-roll bar at the front and air ride at the rear, much like in a 5 Series Touring. I believe that's more to keep the whole thing level rather than for any sort of performance or luxury improvements, but that is very disappointing. And on certain sections of the road, like potholes and grates and that sort of thing, the car can be quite crashy. Around town, where you would simply expect this car to be really rather luxurious, it feels fidgety and uncomposed and just doesn't really know what it's doing. If this were a more sporting model, I would perhaps be a little bit more forgiving of it. But it's not. This is the 535D luxury, and that's a rather large oversight. It's also a very difficult thing to place, not simply because of its size. The rear window is absolutely tiny. You can see next to nothing useful out of it because you still sit relatively low in the car and the window is quite high. You can't see anything. If someone parked an S2000 behind you, it would vanish. Luckily, there is a very nice and clear reversing camera, but if that and the parking sensors were out of action, I would not want to park this car. As it happens, there are an awful lot of places where this car's owner Ivan says he simply can't take it because it's just too big for the car parks. You would maybe think that the 3 Series GT therefore would be the better choice. However, he said even he has to draw the line with regards to looks at some point, and the 3 Series is perhaps even less resolved than this. It also simply doesn't have as much space as this car, and he does use the space. He takes this frequently across Europe with himself and 3 others, and for that kind of journey this really is perfect. The turning is decent, the brakes are very good, if a little bit over servoed for my liking, the engine is strong. It is a fabulous car, has all the room in it you'd ever need, you've got a decent driving position, excellent visibility, the A pillar up here is quite thick but also very steeply raked, so it's not a problem. The B pillar is slightly in your way but not really enough to really write home about. It's only the rear that is an issue, and when you're going forwards you don't need to worry about it. The dash is a typical BMW weak point because they've got this nice fancy digital item and they do next to nothing with it, but that's a failing on the regular 5 and 7 as well, so nothing specific to the GT there. Over here you've got the standard iDrive system, which is just as good as in any other car. It's still a very decent, nice system to use. You've got 4-zone climate control. This has the mid-level Hi-Fi, not the top end, but better than standard, and it sounds okay. I also appreciate the extra effort BMW have gone to in terms of the design. The interior door handles at the back, they're really very nice. The rear seats also recline in a fairly basic and manual way, and if need be, you can also fold them flat and load through from the rear, giving you acres of storage space. So, not a looker then, but a car of some very fine qualities. If you're on the fence about it, allow me now to come in for the killer blow. There is no denying that the car market is currently in a very strange place, with prices for even the most humdrum vehicles at an all-time high and demand almost never ending. But there are still a few bargains out there, and this has got to be one of the biggest of them all. I went to check this morning on Auto Trader to see how much one of these would set you back. An early example could be had from as little as £6,000. But more interestingly, the most expensive, most recent, best equipped example of a 5 GT that I could find today was about 25 grand. Even better, this is actually Ivan's second 5 GT. He had a 530 before. That did 40,000 miles trouble-free. This, barring a small rattle, which is the rear top-mounted brake light, is absolutely fine. They can suffer certain issues, and things like, for example, the rear suspension can prove problematic, as all air suspension can. Replacing the airbags in those is about £1,000 a corner. But compared with, say, an older 7 Series or something, these should be a reasonably dependable car. For motorway journeys as well, I'm sure you can improve on the 33 mpg fuel economy figure. Notice there what I'm talking about with the suspension though. Weirdly harsh, this car. See? Maybe the wheels are part responsible. That is one thing he did have to replace. He had to get a new alloy because BMW do like fitting these things with run flats, and they have fairly brittle seeming alloys that do like to break. They're quite large, 20s on this car, and he did have to replace one of those. That was actually quite tricky to find because this being a non-M Sport model, the wheels aren't actually all that common. Beyond that though, it is really a very decent, dependable, reliable car. It's going to cost you no more to service and maintain than any other 535D. And when you look at how much car you get for what is today a reasonably little outlay, this actually becomes quite a tempting proposition. If you're not fussed about having the fuggliest car in the car park, it's a good car. At the end of the day, as far as I'm concerned, if this car can tempt somebody out of an X6 or similar, then that's only ever a good thing. And I do hope BMW maybe try something bold again, but make it a little bit prettier. Can we please? How about another Z8? Wouldn't mind BMW having a second crack at that. Anyway, for now, that's one of the weirdest cars out there. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. A big thanks to Ivan for bringing it out. Thanks to you for watching. Please like, comment down below, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you all for the next one. Bye-bye.